She thought she was being sneaky, dropping the kids off with her parents, driving 400 miles a week, and sneaking off to cheap motels with her ex-boyfriend. She didn't know I had a cop buddy and a private investigator. By the time I was done, she lost me, and he lost everything. If you've ever dreamed of exposing a liar, of watching karma hit with full force, then this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe for more true revenge tales, and comment below if you've ever witnessed justice unfold like this. Let's get into it. Way back in the early 2000s, my life felt stable. Married, 2 kids, a decent house, the kind of everyday chaos you expect with children aged 4 and 6. But beneath that surface, something wasn't sitting right. At first it was subtle. My kids, full of innocent chatter, started talking more and more about spending the day with their grandparents, my wife's parents. Now, they were lovely people, and nothing about them made me uneasy. What did was geography. They lived over 90 minutes away. Yet my wife, who only worked part-time, was supposedly making this long drive with our kids 2 to 3 times a week. That's a 3-hour round trip, multiple times a week, for someone who complained about gas prices and hated highway driving. I asked her about it. She brushed it off, said her parents wanted more time with the grandkids. Her tone was casual, but her eyes darted too quickly. Her voice lacked conviction. My gut clenched in a way I couldn't ignore. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse, I just started tracking the mileage on her car, and what do you know, she was putting in an extra 400 miles every week. That's when it stopped being a feeling. I knew something was going on. And it wasn't just a few extra visits to Grandma's. I waited. I watched. And then one day I got a gift. A yellow sticky note by the computer, her AOL email password scribbled down like it was nothing. I wish I could tell you I hesitated, that I debated crossing that line, but I didn't. I logged in. What I found turned my stomach. Email threads between my wife and her college best friend, casual, disgusting exchanges about how she'd been hooking up with one of her high school exes, laughing at how his wife had let herself go after having kids, calling her names, comparing her sex life with this man to the boring life she had with me. I printed those emails out, every single one. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. That's when I made the best decision of my life. I called an old buddy. He was a cop. Told him what I'd found. He said, "You need a guy named Ron. He used to be one of us. Now he's a PI." Ron was everything I needed. Calm, efficient, and ruthless in the right ways. I gave him the emails, the schedule, the info I'd gathered, and within a week, Ron had a full timeline. He trailed her, tracked her car, took photos. The truth, she was dropping the kids off with her parents, meeting her high school ex, let's call him Bob, for lunch, then heading to a seedy motel for a few hours before going back for the kids. Every detail was documented. Photos, timestamps, license plates, receipts. That was enough. Enough to break my heart. Enough to burn the bridge. I didn't confront her. Not immediately. I went to a lawyer. See, I grew up in a home broken by cheating. My parents' infidelity wrecked my childhood. I swore I'd never do the same to my kids, but I also knew I couldn't stay. My lawyer was quick and professional. We drew up the divorce papers, but I wasn't done yet. I wanted to know more about Bob. I gave Ron a new mission, find out everything, and boy did he deliver. Bob was married, 3 kids, worked as a vice president of sales at his father-in-law's company. He looked like the kind of guy who wore loyalty like a mask. Clean-shaven, family man on Facebook, businessman in the community. But behind that mask, a man who met my wife in parking lots and cheap motels while his own kids waited at home. That's when I decided to bring it all crashing down. Step 1, my wife got served with divorce papers at her job. Step 2, that same day, Ron met with Bob's wife. He handed her the entire report, photos, emails, motel records, the works. She was blindsided, but composed. Her eyes didn't water. They narrowed. I didn't know what she'd do next. That was her choice. But I gave her the truth. What happened after? That was karma doing its work. Bob's wife took the kids and cleaned out their joint accounts. Her father, Bob's boss and landlord, found out and fired him. And since the house they lived in was owned by her parents, he got kicked out of his own home. It didn't stop there. Their divorce became a war zone. Public court records told the tale: alimony battles, child custody fights, and restraining orders. One day, Bob showed up at the house uninvited, and things turned violent. Her brother intervened. Bob got his nose broken, and he got arrested. More charges followed: a stint in jail, legal fees, reputation ruined. The last I heard, Bob left the state. Couldn't find work, couldn't rebuild his life. As for his ex-wife, she ended up taking over the family business after her father retired. She's doing just fine. And me? I didn't rub it in my wife's face. I didn't need to. I handled everything through the courts. We maintained minimal contact for the sake of the kids. Birthdays, school events, logistics. Now that they're grown, I have no reason to talk to her. I don't hate her, but I don't feel anything either. She's just someone I used to know. And that's the best revenge of all. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't lose my mind. I let the truth do the work. I turned her betrayal into his downfall, and I walked away with my integrity intact. They threatened to fire me if I took vacation. Then, when I finally returned, they introduced me to my replacements and told me to train them. So I did, exactly how they instructed. And when the company crashed without me, all I did was sit back and watch. If you've ever been overworked, undervalued, or replaced by someone you had to train, this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe for more real revenge stories, and drop a comment if you've ever gotten sweet payback at work. Let's dive into this one. This story takes place a few years ago in a very niche industry, media intelligence. Not a field many people know about, especially where I'm from. At the time, I had no experience in it whatsoever. I had just come from the hospitality world, restaurants, hotels, fast-paced service jobs. Switching to a data-heavy, tech-based industry was a leap into the unknown. But I was hungry to prove myself. I started as an assistant, absorbing everything I could like a sponge. I was green, yes, but determined. My team consisted of just 3 people: myself, a fantastic colleague, and the best boss I've ever had. These 2 were veterans in the field. They didn't just teach me the technical skills. I learned the mindset, the intuition. Within 6 months, I was no longer just new. I was running entire systems on my own. But of course, nothing good lasts forever. Upper management began to show its true colors. In just 1 year, the company went through 4 leadership changes. Each new director brought conflicting ideas, chaos, and ego. The stress started breaking people. My boss and colleague, the 2 people who made this job tolerable, had enough. They gave their notice. Before they left, they pulled me aside. "Come with us," they said. "You're good at this. You don't need to stay in this dumpster fire." But I was young, naive, and full of that toxic work ethic we often mistake for loyalty. I wanted to prove something, to them, to myself, to this company. So I stayed. That decision, it cost me. After they left, I was the last one in the department, the only person who understood both the legacy systems and the newly introduced platforms that the company ran on. Suddenly, I wasn't just handling my own tasks. I was the entire department. They assigned me additional markets, dumped technical support on me, and told me I had to be on call at all hours. No extra pay, no overtime, no bonus, just pressure. I was working 13-hour days, every single day, for months. I begged my manager, "Please, I need help. I can't keep this up." But all she said was, "We don't have the budget." Classic. One evening, the CEO himself, this man who loved to act like a benevolent leader while penny-pinching every corner, invited me to dinner. He'd always seen me as the loyal one, the only employee who hadn't quit. He knew I was the glue holding his broken systems together. Over dinner, he said, "If you could change anything about the company, what would it be?" I didn't hold back. I told him, "We need 2 more people in my department, immediately." He smiled like I'd asked for a yacht. "We don't have the budget." "Okay," I said. "Then how about a raise or promotion?" "I'm doing the work of 3 people." His tone changed. "You don't have the necessary experience yet." My blood boiled. I felt my face flush, my jaw tighten. Experience? I was the only person who even knew how the systems worked anymore. I didn't lash out. I didn't argue. But inside, something clicked. I realized what I was to this company, a tool to be used and discarded. And it was time to stop sacrificing myself for people who saw me that way. I had saved up almost 3 weeks of paid time off. I told my manager I was taking it. She tried to threaten me. "If you leave now, I'll fire you." I looked her in the eyes and said, "Do what you need to do. I'm taking my vacation." And I did. I logged out and disappeared for 3 weeks. When I came back, fully rested, finally calm, I walked into the office and saw 2 unfamiliar faces sitting at my desk. Confused, I asked my manager, "Who are they?" She smiled like she was delivering a birthday surprise. "They're your replacements. We've decided to let you go. But don't worry, you have a 2-month notice period, and during that time, we'll need you to train them." I stood there, stunned. Not just at the decision, but at the nerve. She had fired me, and then asked me to teach my job to 2 interns. But then came the moment of brilliance. I remembered something she had said in her email just before I went on PTO. She wrote, "Please focus on training the interns on the legacy systems. I'll handle the rest." That single sentence became my shield and my sword. So that's exactly what I did. For the next 2 months, I trained those interns. I showed them every detail of the legacy systems, the old infrastructure, the historical tools, how the systems had evolved. I made sure they understood it all, but I never once touched the newer systems. The ones that were actively used every day. The systems that required customized scripts, nuanced processes, and insider knowledge. The ones that kept the entire media intelligence product alive. Because according to my manager, she would handle the rest. The interns were eager. They followed everything I said, took notes, but they never once asked about the modern systems. I assumed my manager had them covered. She didn't. It wasn't until my final week that she realized something was wrong. She called me into her office, fuming. "Why haven't you trained them on the new systems? How are they supposed to take over your job?" I calmly replied, "I followed your instructions. You told me to train them on the legacy systems. I assumed you were training them on everything else." She stammered, "That's not what I meant." "Oh? Because I still have your email." And with that, I forwarded the email to her, the CEO, and the managing director. Within minutes, the CEO called an emergency meeting. They tried to grill me, accused me of being difficult, of sabotaging the transition. I let them talk. Then I asked them to open the email again, read it out loud. Silence. Then the CEO ended the call without another word. My last day came and went. I packed my things and left. No drama, no speeches, but I knew the fallout was just beginning. It took 2 months. Then my phone rang. It was my manager. Panicked, desperate. "We need you to come back. The interns don't understand the systems. Everything's breaking. Deadlines are being missed. Clients are leaving." I let her rant. Then she said something that made me laugh out loud. The termination was a misunderstanding. Just a prank. We always meant to keep you. I told her, "I'll come back, but you'll pay me triple. No negotiations." She called me insane and hung up. I haven't heard from her since, but my friend from another department keeps me updated. Apparently, the department is falling apart. My old manager is drowning. Upper management is furious. Systems are failing. Clients are demanding refunds. And me? I'm working elsewhere now, for people who actually value me, people who don't treat loyalty like a weakness. And that company? It's still trying to recover. They thought I was replaceable, disposable, just another cog in the machine. But what they didn't understand was that knowledge is power, and when you abuse the only person holding that knowledge, don't be surprised when the machine collapses. Watching them scramble, beg, and burn bridges they built themselves, that was more satisfying than any revenge fantasy, and all I did was follow instructions. Sometimes revenge doesn't need fireworks. Sometimes all it takes is following bad orders to the letter and letting arrogance do the rest. The higher they climb on pride, the harder they fall on ignorance. She told me not to park on the street, even though it was completely legal, so I did exactly what she asked. And the results. Let's just say Linda, the pretend HOA queen, ended up with a ticket on her windshield. If you've ever had to deal with a nosy neighbor, a fake rule enforcer, or someone who thinks the whole block should follow their personal code of conduct, this story's for you. Hit that like button, subscribe for more petty justice, and let's get into it. You ever live near someone who thinks they run the entire neighborhood? Not someone with an actual title or any legal power, just a regular person with a superiority complex and too much free time? Yeah, that's Linda. Linda is what I like to call a self-appointed HOA enforcer. The kicker? We don't even have an HOA in our neighborhood. Not one. But that hasn't stopped her from printing fake notices, walking around with a clipboard like she's conducting inspections, and knocking on doors to scold people about their lawn length or holiday decorations being too excessive. Everyone knows her, everyone tries to avoid her. But a couple months ago, Linda decided I was her new project, and it all started over where I parked my car. Now, I've been parking on the street in front of my house for years. My driveway is short and awkward, and the street spot is right by my door. It's legal, it's not in front of anyone else's house, and I'm not blocking mailboxes, driveways, or hydrants. But Linda didn't like that. One morning, I walked outside to head to work and found a little piece of paper tucked under my windshield wiper. In big block letters, it said, "This is not a parking lot. Park in your driveway like a respectful neighbor. Don't make me involve the city." At first, I thought it was a prank. I laughed, crumpled it up, and tossed it. But a few days later, Linda made it personal. She caught me just as I was pulling groceries out of my trunk. Linda: "Excuse me, I already told you parking on the street is inconsiderate." Me: "It's a public street. I'm not blocking anything." Linda: "That doesn't matter. It looks bad. It makes the neighborhood look bad. Be respectful. Park in your driveway or I will report you." At that moment, I could feel my ears heat up, my hands clenched around the grocery bag. I wasn't even angry, yet, just stunned. This woman was trying to dictate where I could legally park, like she was the sheriff of the sidewalk. I could have argued, but instead, something clicked in my brain. "You want me to park in the driveway, Linda?" "Fine, I'll park in the driveway. Now, here's the thing. My driveway is small, short, really. When I pull my car in, even if I do it carefully and center it perfectly, the back of my car sticks out over the sidewalk, just enough to block it completely, and funny enough, that actually violates a real city ordinance. You're not supposed to obstruct sidewalks. So the next day, I did as Linda demanded. I parked in my driveway, front tires just kissing the garage door, back bumper hovering over the sidewalk. And I waited. I didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, I was watching TV when I heard sharp, angry knocking on my front door. I knew who it was before I opened it. Linda stood there, red-faced, arms folded like she was a middle school principal. Linda: "You can't block the sidewalk, that's illegal." Me: "Oh, I thought you wanted me to park in my driveway." Linda: "Not like that, park properly." Me: "Well, that's the only way to park in my driveway. It's a small one." Linda blinked, jaw clenched. I could practically hear her brain stuttering. Me: "I guess I'll have to go back to parking on the street then." And just like that, I closed the door with a polite smile. For the next few days, I resumed my usual routine, car parked on the street, completely within legal limits. I figured that was the end of it. Oh, how wrong I was. A week later, I noticed a white city vehicle slow roll past my house. Then another car pulled up, this time with a guy in a reflective vest and clipboard. He walked up, looked at my car, and took some notes. I stepped outside. "Everything okay?" I asked. He looked up. "Oh yeah, we got a complaint. Something about illegal street parking, but from what I can see, you're not breaking any rules. You're good." I raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess, Linda?" He smirked. "We've had a few reports from this area." Then he leaned in slightly and added, "She's been calling the city weekly." reporting neighbors for anything and everything. Most of it's nonsense. You wouldn't believe the stuff she complains about. I thanked him and went back inside, grinning. I'd like to say Linda backed off after that, but people like her, they don't quit. About a week later, I noticed something new. Linda was now parking her car on the street, right in front of my house. At first, I ignored it. I mean, it's a free street. She could park there if she wanted. But then I looked a little closer. Her car? It was just a bit too close to the fire hydrant across from my yard, like a foot or so too close, maybe even less. So I did exactly what Linda had threatened to do to me. I called the city. I gave the address, described the car, mentioned the hydrant. A couple days later, I walked outside and saw the most beautiful yellow envelope I've ever seen fluttering on her windshield. A parking ticket. I didn't even try to hide my smile. Linda didn't say anything to me after that. No more notes, no more confrontations, no more passive-aggressive suggestions. The silence was golden. From that day forward, she stopped parking in front of my house. She stopped knocking on doors and playing neighborhood cop. Whether it was the ticket or the buildup of being shut down by the city over and over again, I don't know. But something finally broke her imaginary badge. And me? I still park on the street. Every day, legally, comfortably, freely. Because sometimes the best way to deal with people like Linda is to play by the rules, better than they ever could. People like Linda thrive on control. But the thing about control is, it only works when others play along. The moment you stop reacting and start responding, they lose every bit of power they imagined they had. They forced my entire IT team to work on the 4th of July, said we didn't have lives anyway, so I took their budget, threw a $6,000 barbecue, and got the VP publicly screamed at by the CEO. Here's how corporate disrespect turned into the most legendary office party my company has ever seen. This story starts, like most workplace disasters, with an email on a Monday morning. The date was the 13th, and I had just opened my inbox to find a message from a vice president. Not even the vice president over my department. Let's call her Bad VP. The email said that my entire team, IT, would be required to work on July 4th. Let me pause and say this. We are the IT team, and if you've ever worked in tech, you already know. We get dumped on constantly. Holidays, forget them. Downtime doesn't exist. Appreciation, only when something breaks and they need us to fix it. Still, I tried to be diplomatic. I responded that our team had already been scheduled off. People had made plans. This wasn't just some long weekend. They were asking us to work a national holiday with zero notice or justification. But the email back? Radio silence. So I started making calls, talking to higher-ups, trying to fix it before it snowballed. I let my team know what was happening and assured them that no matter what, I'd make it right. Whether that meant escalating the issue or, worst case, making it up to them later. 3 meetings later, it was clear I wasn't getting anywhere. So I went straight to the top. I emailed the CEO. Now, everyone told me this guy is very family first, doesn't believe in working holidays, and my own VP encouraged me to reach out. Problem was, the CEO was in the Bahamas until the 6th. Fantastic. I could almost hear the sound of my forehead hitting my desk. Since the cavalry wasn't coming, I did the next best thing. I told everyone we'd treat it as a work-from-home day. We'd route all calls through my cell. I'd shoulder most of the support. Quietly, I expected 0 calls, especially since I never sent out the email announcing IT support for the 4th like I was supposed to. But then came the next punch to the gut. Another email. This time it said that working from home was not allowed. We were to be physically in the office or we'd be reported. And get this, the reason? We need to ensure no one is playing video games on company time. Let me explain something. We work from home 2/3 of the week, and yes, sometimes we play games during downtime. Because we're efficient, our ticket queue is empty, and everything runs smoothly. So now, they wanted to uproot everyone's plans and drag us into the office. Because of video games? So I walked into the Bad VP's office, face to face. And what she told me, it still makes my blood boil. It's just IT, you guys don't have lives. That's a direct quote. I reported it to my actual VP. His response? I'll handle it out after the 4th. In the meantime, get creative. Now, I've worked with this guy long enough to know that get creative is code for corporate chaos. So I got to work. I asked Bad VP, since she was so adamant about us being there, if she had any objections to us having a little office party. Her words, as long as it doesn't interfere with call flow, go wild. Use your new company card if you need to. Never tell me to go wild. It was Tuesday, June 21st. I called an all-hands meeting with the team. I asked who had made plans for the 4th. 2 had fireworks plans with family. Others had barbecues or road trips lined up. All of it was gone now, so I made them a promise. They'd still have a holiday. We were going to throw a party, a real one. No hot dogs and soda. I was going big. And they wouldn't have to spend a single dime. I got approval in writing. I looped in my VP and even the bad VP. Told them we'd work through 8 p.m. as ordered, and yes, we'd be having a party to boost morale. The bad VP's reply? I would expect an office party too if I had to work on July 4th. Go wild. Use the company card. No fireworks or alcohol on company property. Copy that. Now, let me tell you about our office. A while back, our team got moved into a separate building, across a small creek. It's nice. Gaming room, gym, fully stocked soft drink bar, and behind it, a big patio that leads to a footbridge over the creek. And once you cross that bridge, you're in another county and not on company property. Let the games begin. The 4th of July, day of the work event. I called in everyone early that morning and told them to invite friends, family, whoever. I made it clear this would be a non-alcoholic event on company property, but off the record, I encouraged folks to bring fireworks. As long as it wasn't on the building's land, I didn't care. The workday? Totally silent. We got 7 calls all day, all from the bad VP. Each time she was checking in to make sure we were manning the phones. Meanwhile, my team was gaming, streaming movies, and rotating between Smash Brothers and Mario Kart. It was the most peaceful shift we'd had in months. At 6 p.m., I gave the signal. Food's ready. What they expected, hot dogs and burgers. What they got, a feast. We had smoked brisket, spare ribs, smoked sausage, smoked turkey, BBQ beans, 2 kinds of potato salad, coleslaw, green beans with bacon, potatoes au gratin, hamburgers and bratwurst hot dogs, pizza from 2 top-tier places, custom cakes, boutique cookies, 4 pies, and 2 pounds of homemade fudge. Drinks, everything from Coke to Dr. Pepper Zero. The food wasn't cheap either. I ordered from the best BBQ joint in the entire DFW area, top 10 for 30 years. And the owner? A friend. He even brought his kids to hang out. People started arriving with their families, some with beer in hand. I reminded them, alcohol stays in the cars. Out on the patio, people lit sparklers. Kids tossed water balloons. My VP showed up with his own family and joined in. At 8:30, once the sun dipped, we all crossed the footbridge over the creek, off company property, out of city jurisdiction, and that's when the fireworks started. Real ones. For an hour, we launched color bombs, Roman candles, and mortar shells off a makeshift wooden board. The field lit up like Disneyland. At 10:30, people began to head out. I told everyone to take leftovers. Most of the food was gone, but we still had plenty. A small group, including my VP, stayed behind to clean up. As we stood there laughing, he asked, "How much did all this cost?" I just smirked. Tuesday morning, I submitted the expense report. The number? Over $6,000. The BBQ alone accounted for nearly half. The rest? Top-tier desserts, boutique snacks, and massive pizza orders. When the bad VP saw the report, she lost it. But the CEO? Oh. He wasn't mad at the cost. He was furious that the IT team had been the only group forced to work on a national holiday, especially when I showed him the phone logs. No real service requests, just her calls. And then came the kicker. My VP told the CEO what the bad VP said. "You guys don't have lives." She admitted to it. The CEO exploded. She got yelled at. In person, in front of executives, in a meeting. Today, her office is empty. She's not marked as terminated in the system, but let's just say her career clout vanished overnight. Also, new policy: any purchase over $4,000 requires triple approval. You're welcome, Finance Department. And as for me, my bid to return the IT department to flexible work-from-home status? Approved. No pushback. The bad VP thought she could bully us because it's just IT. She forgot that IT runs the backbone of the entire company. We don't make a fuss until we do. And when we do it right, with receipts, spreadsheets, and sparklers. She wanted obedience. She got fireworks, a full catering bill, a CEO lecture, and a department that proved it had more life, more heart, and more loyalty than she could ever imagine. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's catered. Sometimes it's a perfectly executed party that leaves your team happy, your enemies exposed, and your legacy unforgettable. Never underestimate the power of petty justice, especially when you hand the IT team a blank check. My supervisor kept micromanaging everything I did, right down to how I dressed. So one day, I wore a full suit just to be petty, and by the end of that day, he lost his team, and I got promoted to report directly to the CEO. From the moment I started this job a few months ago, something felt off. Not about the work or the company, it was my supervisor. Let's call him Josh. Josh wasn't the worst person I've ever worked for. He wasn't a screamer or a tyrant. But what he was a chronic micromanager. The kind of guy who never gave real feedback, just vague criticisms. The kind of boss who made you feel like you were always 1 inch away from being in trouble, even when you were following the rules to the letter. Whenever I got pulled aside for something, I'd stay calm. I'd try to clarify. Me: can you tell me exactly what you expect next time? Josh: just do better. Always the same tone, always the same emptiness. Do better. Like I hadn't been bending over backward trying to meet every unspoken standard he never communicated. Eventually, things got bad enough that I scheduled a meeting with HR just to talk it through. I wasn't trying to throw him under the bus. I just wanted to work in peace. I wanted clarity. I wanted guidance. HR listened, nodded, said they'd monitor the situation. Spoiler, they didn't. Which brings us to yesterday. I'm at my desk doing my usual email, client dashboard, project updates, when Josh strolls over and says, "Josh, you need to start dressing better." Now, let me give you some context here. Our office isn't just casual. It's borderline Silicon Valley startup casual. Hoodies, t-shirts, jeans, ball caps, normal. On that day, I was wearing a button-up flannel, clean chinos, and Adidas Gazelles. No hat, no graphic tee. I wasn't on a client call. I looked totally in step with the office vibe, actually maybe even better than average. Still, I stayed calm. Me: can you clarify what you mean? Should I be wearing dress shoes? Tuck my shirt in? Josh: just better. More professional. Classic Josh. He told me to check with HR if I needed clarification. So I did. I walked straight over to HR and asked the same thing. "Hey, what's our dress code? Am I doing anything wrong?" They gave the standard breakdown. Pants, closed-toed shoes, no tank tops. Me: have I ever worn anything that violated that? HR: nope, you're good. So now I'm mad. And not just mad, I'm exhausted. I've tried every adult solution. I asked for guidance. I stayed calm. I talked to HR. I followed the rules. And every time I got vague answers and backhanded criticism, so I decided to be petty, professionally petty. That night, I went home, pulled out the one suit I owned, a fitted charcoal two-piece I kept for weddings and funerals, and laid it out like armor. The next morning, I walked into the office like I was heading to a board meeting at Goldman Sachs. Buttoned up, cufflinks, leather dress shoes, hair slicked, tie crisp. I didn't say anything to anyone, but I didn't have to. Heads turned, literally. Coworkers stared as I passed. Someone near the printer audibly whispered, "Whoa, what's the occasion?" I just smiled. When people came to my desk, they asked the obvious. Coworker 1, you going to court or something? Me, smiling, nope, just was told to dress better. That line landed like a hammer every time. You could see the confusion spread across their faces. 2 coworkers actually said, wait, I think you normally dress fine. One even added, better than Josh, to be honest. Word spread fast. By lunch, I was a walking rumor. Everyone had a theory. Most thought I had a job interview or was trolling for fun. But whenever anyone specifically asked why, I told them the truth. Josh told me to dress better. So I did. That afternoon, everything changed. Midday, enter the CEO. Now, the CEO of our company is a pretty laid-back guy, young, driven, progressive. Doesn't usually meddle unless something's gone really wrong, but around 2 p.m., he walked right up to my desk. CEO, hey, you look sharp today. Me, thanks, just doing what I was asked. He raised an eyebrow. Asked by who? I gave him the same answer. Josh told me I needed to dress better. There was a pause, just a few seconds, but I could see the wheels turning. He didn't say anything else, just nodded slowly and walked away. I figured that was the end of it. A fun stunt, a bit of water cooler buzz. Maybe I'd keep it going for the rest of the week, just to make the point. But I wasn't ready for what happened next. Late afternoon, the fallout. At around 4 p.m., the CEO came back. This time, he didn't stop to chat. He leaned down and quietly said, CEO, just so you know, starting tomorrow, you'll report directly to me. Let's schedule a weekly one-on-one. I blinked. Me. Wait, seriously? CEO. Yeah, and I'll be having a conversation with Josh. This isn't the first issue we've heard about. It's just the first one we've seen. Then he gave me a reassuring smile and walked away. And that's when it hit me. Josh wasn't just getting a talk, he was getting demoted. You see, I was Josh's only direct report, the only person under his wing. If I now report to the CEO, that means Josh doesn't supervise anyone. He didn't just lose me, he lost his authority. He's just another employee now. And the best part? I never yelled. I never got angry. I didn't raise a single HR complaint after that first meeting. I didn't send dramatic emails or stage confrontations. I just put on a suit. There's something incredibly satisfying about watching a power trip collapse under its own weight. Josh pushed and pushed, gave vague instructions, micromanaged without clarity, made me feel like I was never enough, never good enough, never professional enough, never better enough. And all it took to flip the entire script was giving him exactly what he asked for. Because that's the thing about petty revenge. It only works when it's rooted in the truth. I didn't bend the rules. I didn't exaggerate. I simply followed the ridiculous logic to its natural and public conclusion. And now? Josh sits in a row of desks like the rest of us. Meanwhile, I've got my weekly meetings with the CEO. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, sharp, surgical. It's dressing too well, speaking too politely, following the rules so perfectly that the absurdity becomes undeniable, and justice handles the rest. My manager didn't believe I was sick, threatened to fire me unless I got a doctor's note, so I dragged my half-dead body to the clinic, and what the doctor wrote ended up getting me 2 weeks off. And my manager nearly fired. If you've ever had a boss who pushed you too far, disrespected your boundaries, or thought rules didn't apply to them, hit that like button. Subscribe for more true revenge stories that prove karma always finds its way. Now let's dive into this one. This story takes place when I was in my early 20s, working at a supermarket. And to be fair, I was a damn good employee. I was never late. I usually showed up early. I didn't take long breaks. I even covered shifts without being asked. I also hadn't called in sick for almost a year. And when I did, it wasn't voluntary. The manager had literally looked at me one day and said, "You look like death. Go home." So, yeah, I had a solid record. I showed up. I worked hard. I didn't make waves. Which is probably why what happened next made my blood boil. It started on a Sunday night. I was tossing and turning in bed, burning up 1 minute and freezing cold the next. My stomach felt like it was staging a revolution. Around 2 a.m., I was sitting on the toilet while simultaneously throwing up in the sink. Not exactly a glamorous moment. I must have blacked out because when I lifted my head again, it was 7 in the morning. My shift wasn't until noon, but I knew there was no way I was going to make it. So I did what you're supposed to do. I picked up my phone and called the manager on duty. Let's call him Steve. Now, Steve had a reputation. The kind of guy who never believed you were sick unless he personally saw you collapse. He played favorites, usually the other managers, and we all knew that when he called in sick, it was usually just because he was hungover from the night before. Still, I tried to be respectful. Me. Hey, Steve, sorry, I can't come in. I've been up all night being sick. Fever, vomiting. I think it might be the flu. Steve, don't be stupid. If you had the flu, you'd be completely knocked out. He said that like I wasn't literally calling him after waking up on a sink. Steve, I need you in. Come in or you're fired. That hit me like a brick. My heart started racing. My hands got clammy. This was during the recession. Jobs were scarce, and I was barely keeping afloat as it was. Me, I really can't. I told you I passed out. I've been vomiting all night. Steve, either come in or bring a doctor's note, or you're fired. Now, in the UK, it's illegal to demand a doctor's note during the first 5 days of sickness. Employees are legally allowed to self-certify. It's meant to protect workers, especially low-wage ones, from being forced into work when they're unwell. I knew this, but I was terrified, so I dragged myself out of bed, nearly collapsed putting my socks on, and walked the 25 minutes to the local doctor's office. Every step felt like a punishment. I was drenched in sweat but freezing cold, legs wobbling, vision swimming. I was honestly scared I'd pass out in the street. When I finally got in to see the doctor, after waiting just over an hour in the walk-in queue, she looked horrified. Doctor, why are you here? You clearly have the flu. You're running a fever. You should be in bed, not sitting in a waiting room infecting everyone. I felt a wave of shame and guilt, but I tried to explain. I told her everything. How I was being threatened with termination, how I couldn't afford to be jobless, and how I knew the law but was too scared to push back. She stared at me for a second, and then her entire expression changed. The frustration in her eyes turned into cold, focused anger, but not at me, at Steve. Doctor, he wants a doctor's note? Fine, I'll give him a doctor's note. Now, Steve was expecting a basic confirmation, something like, patient seen today, requires 2 days off to rest. You know, the kind of vague note you can't argue with but also can't abuse. Instead, the doctor wrote something legendary. It read something along these lines. Patient name, attended surgery today after being compelled by their employer, manager's full name to do so, despite UK law permitting self-certification for up to 5 days. This unnecessary and hazardous trip exacerbated their condition. Due to high fever, 39 degrees Celsius, and severe symptoms, the patient is unfit to work and requires a full 2-week recovery period. They are not to return to work under any circumstances before date. Had they been allowed to recover at home, only a few days may have been necessary. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "If I could sign you off for longer without further testing, I would. Go home and rest." So I did, but not before I stopped by work to deliver the note. Personally, I walked in, pale and shivering, and a duty manager immediately asked what the hell I was doing there. They took one look at me and said, "You should be at home." I told them I was there to see Steve. They looked horrified. "Oh God, he made you come in? You look awful." That duty manager walked with me downstairs to Steve's office. I could barely stand. My whole body felt like lead, but I handed over the note like it was a sword. Steve's eyes darted across the paper and his face drained of color. You could practically see the internal panic clock ticking down. "Steve, I wasn't serious about firing you." "Right, because growling, 'Come in or you're fired' at 7 a.m. definitely sounds like a joke." The duty manager turned to him and said, "We're driving her home? Now." Steve tried to argue, but the manager cut him off. Don't. You've done enough. They drove me home, made sure I was okay, and went straight back to work, where they reported everything to the union rep. The aftermath? Steve had a disciplinary hearing. He tried to deny the whole thing, claimed I had misunderstood, that I went to the doctor voluntarily, but the duty manager backed me up and reminded HR that Steve had admitted it when I handed him the note. That little "I wasn't serious" comment? Yeah, not so helpful when you're trying to claim you didn't say it. Steve received a formal reprimand. Final warning, one more screw-up, and he was out. As for me, I started feeling better within 3 or 4 days, but thanks to the note, I got 2 full weeks off, paid sick leave, beautiful sunshine, lazy afternoons, while Steve had to cover extra shifts because we were short-staffed. The irony? If he had just let me take the legally allowed few days, I probably would have been back at work by the weekend. Instead, he triggered a chain of events that led to a formal warning, union attention, and me sipping lemonade on my porch while he filled in on the register. And the best part? He brought it all on himself. Steve thought he could intimidate me, that I wouldn't push back, that I didn't know the law. He was wrong on every count. He didn't just lose control, he got a spotlight thrown on his behavior, got publicly reprimanded, lost credibility with his peers, and nearly lost his job. Meanwhile, I got exactly what I needed: rest, validation, and a little poetic justice. And I didn't have to yell, argue, or get even. All I had to do was follow his own demand and let someone else do the fighting for me. Sometimes the best revenge is calm, calculated compliance. When someone demands you jump through hoops, sometimes, it's best to let them find out just how sharp those hoops really are, especially when the law and a very angry doctor is on your side. If you enjoyed that dose of workplace justice, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more real revenge stories, and tell me in the comments, what's the worst thing a boss ever did to you? And did karma come back around? I'm reading every one of them. See you next time.